Link, Hyrule's hero of the wild, the Tarnished, Elden Lord of the lands between. With the world at their fingertips, these two set out on quests far and wide to bring order once more to a fallen land. But when going head to head, which warrior of legend will prevail? He's Wiz and I'm Boomstick, and it's our job to analyze their weapons, armor, and skills to find out who would win a death battle. The Kingdom of Hyrule was in a state of calamity. The great blight that was Ganon having thrown the land into despair long ago. But, sealed and slumbering away, a hero lay dormant, ready to re-emerge. Back in the kingdom's prime, the name of Hyrule's champion knight and guardian of the princess was known far and wide. Link. But, even he couldn't stand to the forces of evil when they arose, and was mortally wounded. Fortunately, Hyrule had access to advanced Seeker technology, and would successfully transport Link into a healing chamber. Unfortunately, this process would take a century to undo the damage Link had sustained. And so, 100 years later, Link would return to the land of Hyrule, uniting the last holdouts of the once great empire and mastering the wild to drive out Ganon's power. Though, before he could take down Ganon, he'd need to get back into the swing of things. It'd been a while after all. He was still a masterful warrior, mind you, able to pick up and fight with basically any weapon he could get his hands on. From crude clubs and rusted swords to military-grade bows and shimmering golden axes, he fought tooth and nail through the world to reclaim both his old belongings and his own memories, while receiving blessings from the sages of the world to grow into a hero that could match Ganon. Aiding him on this quest was the Sheikah Slate, another piece of advanced technology that could produce all sorts of effects using magic. Not only can it alert him of nearby enemies and give him information about them, but it can produce explosions, freeze water, manipulate magnetism, and even lock things in time while letting them build up kinetic energy to send them flying. Eventually, he'd reacquire his old armaments, like the virtually indestructible Hylian shield that can parry and reflect all manner of attacks, even these deadly Guardian lasers, or giant boulders being flung at Link. And of course, the legendary Master Sword, the sword that seals the darkness. The Master Sword is an extremely powerful weapon that alerts Link when truly malevolent energy is afoot, and protects him from corruption, able to carve through monsters like butter and seal away the forces of evil within its power. And he'd need all the power he could get when going against Ganon. The guy can corrupt and move the whole freaking moon! Yeah, those blood moons, turns out they're not just natural phenomena. Ganon's physically causing them himself. He's able to physically move the moon around the sky, no problem, at one point even pulling it so close to the world that it dominates the sky. Doing something like that in the time frame it took Ganon would require over 10 Ronatons of TNT worth of energy. Fortunately for Link, he wasn't fighting alone. With the blessings of the past champions, he could channel all sorts of supernatural boons. He can call down lightning with Urbosa's fury, shield himself with Daruk's protection, fill the sails of his paraglider with Revali's gale, and even get a free second chance at life with Mipha's grace. And, if he needs more than one, his fairy jars can do the same, even against gloom that can tear souls out and rot people away. He's got a selection of potions as well, that he can use to enhance his abilities or heal himself, an assortment of specialty arrows, enchanted with fire, ice, and lightning. Even more impressive are the ancient arrows, long-forgotten pieces of technology that can instantly destroy any object they strike, reducing them to nothing. Eventually, Ganon would reach the apex of his power, returning as the great king of evil, Ganondorf. Though, Link would get some upgrades to match. After his arm got replaced by the arm of legendary King Rauru, he could channel even more magic than before. He could rise through surfaces above him, fuse objects together or telekinetically move them, rewind objects through time, and even summon the spirits of great warriors to aid him. Link can also slow his perception of time through sheer will, entering into a devastating flurry rush of attacks, or letting him precisely aim an arrow. Lightning, hell, even beams of light itself move in slow motion while Link swings away as fast as ever. The hero of Hyrule would clash blades with Ganondorf once more, finally destroying his evil and saving the land. Well, that is until next time. Ganondorf has a nasty habit of coming back every century or so. But that's a story for a different hero in a different time. This one, the hero of the wild, had succeeded, and Hyrule would forever be grateful. The Gorons, the Zora, the Rito, and the Gerudo would all recognize and rally under the Hylian Knight, and his name would forever be sung. For when malice descends, one only needs the courage to stand against it, and Link is that courage personified, a shield over the land, and a sword against the darkness. fallen leaves tell a story. The great Elden Ring was shattered, its swords claimed by demigods in the lands between. Vying for power, they would clash in the shattering, a battle so terrible that the greater will itself seemed to abandon the world. And now, in a time when the world seems lost in the maws of chaos, great heroes of the past have been returned to life by grace once more, all guided by one light, to become Elden Lord and unite the lands between. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask, Fia, the deathbed companion, the loathsome Dung-Eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing, and one other, whom grace would again bless, a Tarnished of no renown. Chosen by the greater will, this nobody would be destined to rise above the heroes around them and become Elden Lord. To this extent, they, along with the other newly revived Tarnished, were blessed with grace by Queen Marika. This grace guides them on their quest and will ensure they can keep fighting. Not only does the grace point them where to go, if a Tarnished is slain, they'll be brought back to life by the grace, even if their body has been totally destroyed. While others were blessed with grace, the Tarnished would prove the most capable. Good thing too, given any number of other Tarnished were forsaken once they stopped being useful, and had their grace revoked from them for failing Marika or abandoning their quest. But this one was different. They were stronger, tougher, smarter, and more agile than any other. One by one, they'd assemble the swords of the ring, taking down the demigods as they went. And they did this with a huge selection of weapons and spells. Swords, bows, spears, axes, hammers that they really shouldn't be able to carry, giant, fingers, you know, the classics. Even the iconic Moonlight Greatsword, having hopped games once again. Surprise, it's back! Just as capable of throwing out waves of energy as ever. That's far from the Tarnishd's only way of slinging magic. They're a master of both arcane and divine magic, letting them heal themselves, fire magic missiles, launch meteors, channel the elements, blast foes with holy light, and a whole lot more. Though, these spells are limited by the Tarnishd's focus, which they can refill thanks to flasks. Said flasks are also handy for topping up on health, while their wondrous physics provide them with buffs. They can also summon their spectral steed Torrent, or use a spirit calling bell to draw out the phantoms from spirit ashes, letting them summon a whole catalog of creatures and warriors from the past, or even create a copy of themselves with all their capabilities. They can annihilate foes with the devastating Comet Azure, manifest colossal, breath-spewing dragon heads, call down storms of lightning, the list goes on. They can also inflict any number of status effects, like the crippling Scarlet Rot, an infection that rots a victim's body away to nothing. Or madness from the Frenzied Flame, a type of supernatural fire that burns with unknowable destruction and can drive people into insanity. Not to mention the blood loss they can inflict, letting them deal devastating wounds on even the toughest opponents, provided they can get enough hits in. No, that should be no problem, given they can keep up with fighters like Radahn, who can slash at the speed of light with the, well, light speed slash. Some of the Tarnished stuff can even channel the Rune of Destined Death, letting them not only kill victims, but destroy their souls. On their quest, the Tarnished would have many paths to restoring the Elden Ring, guided by the Maiden Melina. Though, at the end of the day, the Tarnished would reign as Elden Lord, one way or another, regardless of who they worked with. Well, usually. There's also the possibility of the Tarnished becoming consort to Ranni the Witch, with her becoming Lord in their stead. Or, well, remember that Frenzied Flame stuff? The Tarnished can choose to champion that as well, unleashing the true power of the fire to burn all the world away in chaos, wiping the slate clean and reducing it all to ashes with untold infernal destruction. Becoming the champion of Frenzied Flame is serious, given the last guy who fully embraced the flame ended up like, well, this, and the Tarnished kicked the shit out of that guy. Assuming Midra here is working with the same power the Tarnished wielded when they burnt down the world, that's almost 3 exatons of TNT worth of energy in both their hands. So, will the world be saved, burnt away, or merely shift into a new, equally despair-filled era? That is up to you. Up to the Tarnished to decide. That is what matters. Age after age, hero after hero, the Tarnished of no renown will become a paradoxical title. And they will become immortalized, one way or the other. Even if the world is burnt to ash, there may still be an ending in all of this. But if it exists, well, it's our struggle to reach it. That's ultimately what gives us meaning.
In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Our seed will look back upon us and recall the age of order.
Alright, the combatants are set. We've run the data through all possibilities. It's time for a death battle! notice how many times a character with seemingly infinite lives dies on this show? Wild. Both these legends brought a lot to the table, so let's not waste any time and get into it. As far as basic stats go, Link held clear advantages. Being generous to the Tarnished, we can attribute them with the destruction of the world at the hands of the Frenzied Flame. But this feat is far surpassed by Ganondorf pulling the Moon Dance, and Link can go toe-to-toe with the Demon King. Yeah, while Link himself obviously isn't splitting worlds in two anytime soon, it's not a level of power he hasn't gone up against before. Similarly, while the Tarnished could fight at light speeds, Link could perceive actual beams of light as moving in slow motion, making him comfortably faster as well. Though, these advantages meant squat if Link couldn't keep the Tarnished down for good, something which Marika's grace would make hard to guarantee. So let's move on to their abilities. To Tarnished's credit, they had a lot of tricks up their sleeve, but Link ended up having perfect counters to just about anything they could throw his way. Driving him mad with the Frenzied Flame? Nope, the Master Sword can keep out corruption. Withering him with Scarlet Rot? Link can power and heal through Gloom that has virtually the same effect. Destroying his soul with Destined Death? Surprise! Gloom removes your soul as well, and Link's fairies can still restore him. Summoning spirits to fight for them? Oh hey, Link can do that too. Even the Tarnished's means of bypassing durability, like blood loss, would likely be ineffective given how many hits they'd have to land on a massively faster opponent, and it would be far from an instant win either way. So, that brings us back to our million-dollar question. How does Link put down the Tarnished? Well, it's actually unlikely Link can do anything to prevent the Tarnished from using their grace. However, what's not unlikely is the Tarnished outright losing their grace. Yeah, remember, the whole reason they have grace is because Marika has selected them as one of her champions. But we've seen before that repeated failures can cause her to revoke grace, especially if a new or better candidate is available. We can see this with characters in Elden Ring like Rozier, who, after being deemed unable to fight, had his grace revoked. Or Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing! Him, who'd eventually give up on his own quest and likewise lose his grace. So, if Marika sees her supposed champion getting ragdolled around by someone who's just as valid a champion as her current one, yeah, odds are she's switching to the winning side, especially with Link having things like Ancient Arrows, which could completely annihilate the Tarnished's body in a single shot. While the Tarnished could defy Marika entirely and become Lord of Frenzied Flame, this actually makes it much worse for them. Yeah, not only would it basically be an immediate loss of grace due to forsaking Marika, but becoming such an evil entity would leave them vulnerable to being sealed by the Master Sword. You know, the thing literally called the sword that seals the darkness? The Tarnished was an unrelenting foe, but against Link's heroic might, blessed protections, and battle-hardened focus, their quest was cut short. The Tarnished tried force, but... wait, did I already use that one? Oh well, Link winning has a nice ring to it. The winner is Link.
Patriotic slam fight, bright light, feeling pretty sight. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world.